Dre stepped off the school bus and onto the cracked sidewalk in front of Jefferson High, his eyes scanning the building like it was a battleground. His hoodie was up despite the warm morning sun, headphones in, face unreadable. He moved with the kind of calm that made people either ignore you or keep their distance, not because he looked scared, but because there was something solid about him, something heavy, like he wasn't there to make friends or jokes or memories. He was just there to survive the day and get home. The school itself felt like a different planet compared to what he was used to. In Atlanta, things were loud. Voices, music, traffic, people. There was a rhythm to the chaos that made sense. Here, it was too quiet, too neat. The kids had perfect hair, perfect sneakers, perfect smiles. Even the graffiti in the bathroom stalls looked like someone had drawn it with care. Dre knew the type of place. This was the second he walked in. Small town, tight cliques, not a lot of new faces, especially not ones like his. He walked through the halls with his eyes forward and shoulders back, but he could feel them. The stares, the small glances, that unspoken thing when people tried to look without looking. He'd been the new kid before, but this was different. This wasn't curiosity. It was suspicion. It was sizing up. It was the unspoken question on their faces. What's he doing here? At his locker, Dre took out his notebook and glanced at his schedule. First period, history. He closed the locker with a soft click, then made his way through the maze of pale blue walls and beige tile floors. The bell hadn't rung yet, but the hallways were already packed. Laughter echoed, lockers slammed, and footsteps clicked across, the floors like drum beats. Dre kept moving, not too fast, not too slow. That's when he noticed them. 3 guys standing near the water fountain, each leaning against the wall like it belonged to them. They looked like they had been playing the same characters their whole lives. One tall with a buzz cut and a smug grin, one shorter but wiry chewing gum like it was a personal mission, and one with shaggy hair and eyes that kept flicking around, like he was always expecting to be caught doing something. Corey, Trent, and Jake. He didn't know their names yet, but he knew their type. Every school had them. Loud, cocky, born into a world that told them they'd already won. Dre walked past them. Didn't look, didn't pause, but he could feel, at Corey's eyes locking onto him. That slow turn of the head, the grin. He was a mark now. Not because he had done anything, just because he didn't look like he belonged. By lunch, it had started. Dre sat alone, headphones back in, tray untouched. The food looked like it had been microwaved by someone with no taste buds, and he wasn't hungry anyway. He kept his eyes down, scanning the table, scribbling in his notebook. He was working on lyrics, not for anyone but himself. Music was the one place he could unload everything without talking. Words helped him keep it all in check, the anger, the memories, the stuff he didn't show anyone. But peace never lasts in a place like this. "Yo," a voice said from across the table. Dre looked up slowly. It was Corey, standing there with a tray full of food and a fake smile on his face. Jake and Trent weren't far behind, laughing like this was already a show. Corey sat down across from Dre without asking, and the other 2 flanked him like backup dancers. "You the new kid, right?" Corey asked, stabbing a fry and shoving it into his mouth. Dre took out one headphone. "Yeah. You from the city or something? You got that I don't talk to nobody look." Dre shrugged. "Just here to go to school." Corey laughed. "Cool, cool. Just making sure you're not one of those quiet types that freak out one day and snap. You know what I mean?" Jake chuckled behind him, nudging Trent. Dre's eyes flicked to the side, then back to Corey. Still calm, still quiet. You don't talk much, huh? Dre leaned back slightly. I talk when I got something worth saying. Corey raised his eyebrows like he'd been challenged, but instead of getting mad, he just smiled wider. I like that. You're gonna be fun. Then, just like that, they got up and walked off, laughing to themselves. But Dre knew what that meant. They weren't done. That was just the intro, the first poke to see what he'd do. And the fact that he didn't flinch, that probably made him more interesting. That's how bullies worked. If you cried, they laughed. If you yelled, they laughed harder. But if you stood still and stared back, they got curious. That's when things got dangerous. By the end of the day, the whispers had started. He heard his name, or parts of it, floating around between classes. That new dude. Kinda scary. He don't smile, ever. He didn't mind it. Being feared was better than being pitied. Still, he had no interest in drama. He'd already seen what it could turn into, and he wasn't trying to go there. Not again. As the final bell rang, Dre made his way to his last class, walking past the lockers just as Corey and his crew reappeared. This time they didn't speak. Corey just stepped in his way slightly, subtle but obvious enough to make a statement. Dre didn't stop. He didn't push. He just shifted slightly and kept walking. The message was clear. You're not in my way. Jake laughed, low and short, and Dre heard him mutter something, but he didn't catch it. Didn't need to. He knew it was a game now. They had picked him, the new black kid with the quiet eyes. The easy target, the mystery, and the more he didn't react, the more it would build. But what they didn't know, and what Dre hoped they wouldn't have to find out, was that he wasn't the one who needed to be careful. He had been through worse, fought worse, survived worse, and while he didn't want to go back to that version of himself, he would, if he had to. Not because he liked violence, but because sometimes, when people won't leave you alone, the only language they understand is the one they thought they'd invented. And Dre? He spoke it fluently. The next day started off just like the first, quiet, focused, routine. Dre got up early, threw on the same hoodie, made himself a small breakfast, and slipped out of the house before his aunt even got up. The walk to the E bus stop was calm, with birds chirping and the sky that pale gray blue before the sun fully wakes up. It was peaceful. That part he liked, but even in the silence he could feel it creeping. Something was brewing. That subtle shift in the air when you just know people are planning something. By the time he got to school, he felt eyes on him again. Not just curious glances this time, more intentional. Some people watched him the way folks watch animals at the zoo. Not scared, not friendly. Just interested, like, what's he gonna do next? He didn't react. He never did. He just walked to his locker, grabbed his books, and made it to first period with time to spare. In class, the teacher was talking about something forgettable. Colonialism, maybe, or the Constitution. But Dre wasn't listening. His mind drifted. He thought about his old gym back home, the smell of sweat and old leather gloves. He thought about his uncle's voice yelling instructions, the feeling of hitting the pads until his knuckles went numb. He missed that. Not the fights, but the discipline. The way it forced his brain to quiet down. The way it made the noise of the world go still. But here, the noise was creeping back in. It wasn't until third period that things turned. He was walking through the hall, headed to biology when it happened. Corey, out of nowhere, stuck his leg out as Dre passed, just enough to catch the edge of Dre's sneaker. He stumbled, caught himself, and his books flew across the floor. Everything paused for a second. Laughter echoed. Not from everyone, but from the few that mattered. Phones came out. People started recording. The new kid just got tripped. That's content now. Dre stood still, back straight, chest steady. He didn't move right away. He just looked down at the books like they belonged to someone else. Then slowly, he bent down and started picking them up, one by one, not rushing, not flinching. When he stood up again, he turned to face Corey, who was still grinning. "You good, bro?" Corey said, smirking like a villain in a cheap movie. Dre didn't blink. "You really want to do this?" The hallway went quiet, just for a second, just long enough for the tension to hang heavy. Jake leaned in. "What's that mean?" Dre stared at Corey like he could see through him. "It means you should think real hard about what you do next." Corey's grin faltered for a split second, so fast most people wouldn't notice, but Dre caught it. That's the thing about guys like Corey. They push and push and push until someone pushes back. But they don't expect that. Not really. They count on fear, on silence, on compliance. Dre wasn't about that. Still, he didn't throw a punch. He didn't raise his voice. He just adjusted his backpack, tucked his books under one arm, and walked away. Not fast, not slow, just steady. Like someone who knew exactly who he was. For the rest of the day, the vibe changed. The whispers turned into murmurs. People started watching him more closely. Not like a joke anymore, but like a mystery. Some of them were waiting for a fight. Others were hoping to avoid one. Even the teachers seemed to pick up on it. Mr. Hall gave him an extra nod of respect during fourth period. Ms. Reyes called on him less than usual, like she didn't want to set anything off. Nobody said it out loud, but the energy was different now. Dre kept to himself. He didn't need the attention, and he definitely didn't want it. But he knew what was coming. By Friday, it boiled over. The final bell rang, and the hallways exploded. Like always, slamming lockers, laughing kids, the usual rush to get out. Dre made his way toward the exit, earbuds in, hoodie up. But as he stepped into the parking lot, he felt it. That quiet in-between space, like right before a storm. He saw them out of the corner of his eye, Corey, Jake, and Trent, waiting near the side of the building, blocking the way to the back gate. No teachers around, no cameras, just asphalt, metal fences, and the low hum of tension. Dre kept walking. Corey stepped forward. "Hold up, tough guy." Dre paused and turned, sliding one earbud out. "You done playing yet?" Jake laughed, but it sounded forced. "Nah, we just getting started." Trent cracked his knuckles, clearly trying to play the part. "You think you better than us or something?" Dre dropped his backpack gently on the ground and rolled his shoulders. "Nope, I just think I'm not stupid enough to jump 3 dudes over some weak ego trip." Corey stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "You got jokes now?" Dre's voice was low, calm. "No jokes. I just told you on Tuesday, I'm not the one." They moved fast, or at least they thought they did. Jake lunged first, cocky and clumsy. Dre sidestepped him without effort, grabbed his wrist, twisted it, and with one fluid motion, sent him crashing to the pavement with a loud thud. Jake stayed. Down, groaning. Trent came next, fists swinging wide, no discipline, no form. Dre ducked the first swing, blocked the second, then delivered a sharp knee to Trent's gut that sent the air out of his lungs like a popped balloon. One more shove, and he went down, clutching his ribs. Only Corey was left now. And his confidence? Gone. He backed up slightly, trying to size Dre up like he hadn't already made the biggest mistake of his life. But Dre didn't charge. He walked forward, steady, silent. Corey threw a wild punch, desperate, scared. Dre caught it midair, twisted his arm, and dropped him to the ground with a controlled sweep. He didn't even hit him, just let gravity and bad choices do the work, the whole thing lasted maybe 30 seconds. People had started gathering at the edge of the lot. Not enough to stop it, just enough to witness it. Some had their phones out again. Some stood with mouths open, but Dre didn't look at them. He picked up his backpack, adjusted the strap, and started walking toward the exit. Behind him, the three so-called bullies were left in a pile of regret and bruised pride. No cheers, no applause, just silence. And in that silence, Dre walked away, not because he was running, not because he was scared, but because he was done. They had tested him, and they failed. Monday came like any other. Same sky, same breeze, same creaky school bus that pulled up at the corner. But something in the air felt different, like the wind had shifted, and Dre could feel it before he even stepped on the bus. When he climbed the steps, it was quiet, not that usual chaotic chatter. A couple of kids looked up and quickly looked away. Others nodded, subtle, not disrespectful, but careful. It wasn't fear exactly, more like acknowledgement. The way people act around a storm they didn't know could happen until it did. Dre slid into a seat by himself, popped in his earbuds, and leaned his head against the window. He wasn't playing music, just using them to block the world out for a minute. He liked the silence better anyway. At school, it was more of the same. People stared but didn't speak. Some whispered, some avoided eye contact. Even the teachers were acting different. Mr. Hall called him Mr. Johnson that morning, like Dre had suddenly earned an honorary degree. Ms. Reyes offered him an extra laptop charger and said, "Take your time," when he handed in his quiz late. By lunch, the tension had settled into something new, not fear, not respect, just curiosity. Like everyone had started rewriting the story of who Dre was in their heads. He walked into the cafeteria, tray in hand, and the room didn't go quiet. But it shifted. Conversations dropped in volume. People turned to look, and then quickly turned back. The table where Corey, Jake, and Trent used to hold court sat mostly empty. Corey had a black eye and a bandage across his knuckles. Trent was limping. Jake didn't even show up that day. Dre walked past them like they weren't even there. Sat at an empty table by the window, took a bite of his sandwich, and kept his head down. He didn't need a spotlight. He didn't want one. He just wanted peace. But peace, it turns out, doesn't always come easy. A few minutes later, a kid he hadn't seen before slid into the seat across from him. Short, round glasses, nervous energy in the way his fingers tapped the tray. "Hey," the kid said. "You Dre, right?" Dre looked up, blinked. "Yeah, I'm Malcolm. Just wanted to say thanks." Dre raised an eyebrow. "For what?" Malcolm glanced over his shoulder, lowered his voice. "For what you did Friday. You didn't have to do that." "I didn't do it for anybody," Dre said, chewing slowly. "Yeah, I know. Still, doesn't matter. You shut 'em up. That means something." Dre didn't answer right away. Just took a sip of his juice and looked at Malcolm for a long second. He seemed genuine. Not trying to latch on, not trying to be cool. Just someone who'd probably been picked on enough to recognize when someone stands up and doesn't flinch. "All right," Dre finally said. "Cool." From that moment, it was like a trickle started. One kid, then another. Not all at once, not dramatic, but steady. Kids who used to sit alone started nodding at Dre in the halls. A few even sat near him at lunch. Nobody tried to act like they were best friends. They didn't need to. It was unspoken, a kind of quiet alliance. People who knew what it felt, like to be watched, pushed, tested. Dre never played the hero. He didn't suddenly become class president or some kind of legend. That wasn't his style. But he noticed how things changed, how kids like Malcolm started walking a little straighter, how bullies stopped laughing so loud, how some of the worst ones backed off altogether. Even Corey, who tried to act like he was still the same, now flinched when Dre passed too close in the hall. He never apologized, but he also never tried again. And that was enough. Weeks went by, and the reputation stuck. Not the one Corey tried to give him, but the one Dre earned. The brutal fighter, the one who doesn't talk much but doesn't back down either. Some kids said he'd been in juvie, others said he trained with Navy SEALs. The rumors were wild. Dre never confirmed or denied anything. He didn't need to. What mattered was, he had space now. Space to think, to move, to breathe. In gym class one day, Coach Rollins pulled him aside after everyone else had left the locker room. The coach was a big dude, old school, the kind of guy who'd been around long enough to read people without asking too many questions. "You boxed before?" he asked, arms crossed. Dre nodded. "Yeah, back in Philly." "You're good." "Thanks." "You?" "Think about putting that to use?" Dre shrugged. "I just do it to stay sharp." Coach looked at him a second longer, then handed him a flyer. It was for a regional youth boxing tournament. Tryouts were in 2 weeks. "Think about it," Coach said. "You got more in you than just fists." Dre took the flyer, folded it, slid it into his pocket. "We'll see." That night, he pulled out the flyer again and stared at it while lying on his bed. The ceiling fan spun slow above him, casting soft shadows. His aunt was in the other room watching a game show, laughing. Every now and then, the house felt warmer than usual, not in temperature, in energy. He thought about the gym back home, the feel of gloves on his hands, the sound of the bell, the discipline. He missed that more than anything. Maybe Coach was right, maybe it was. Time to use it again. Not just for defense, but for something more. Something solid. Something real. A few days later, he signed up for the tryout. Didn't tell anyone. Just did it. And when the day came, he showed up at the school gym early, wrapped his hands slow and steady, stepped into the ring, and waited. The coach watched him from the sidelines, arms folded, nodding as Dre moved. Smooth, controlled, efficient. He didn't swing wild. He didn't need to. Every jab was a statement, every step a message. And the other kids trying out, they saw it too. They knew it. Dre wasn't just good, he was dangerous, but not reckless, not out of control. The kind of danger that came from focus, from patience, from knowing exactly what you're capable of and choosing when to show it. Afterward, Coach didn't even need to say anything. He just clapped Dre on the shoulder once and handed him a team